Okay. My name is Gill. I'm visiting with Robert Sandmeyer in his home here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Today is December 10, 2008. And this is a recording as part of the Old State Storage Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Program. And Bob, appreciate you taking time to visit with us today.
Well, I'm pleased to be here.
And want to visit about your experiences in the College of Business Administration, now the Spear School of Business at Oklahoma State University.
I have a hard time with that. I still call it the College
So
of Business
probably both
Administration.
slept. So, well, Bob, first of all, could you kind of back up and a little bit before you got to Oklahoma State University? Kind of where did you grow up? Your family? Can you tell us a little bit about your early life?
Yeah, I grew up in eastern Kansas. I was born in Indiana, and mother moved us to Topeka, Kansas, early in my childhood. I was 5 years old. Grew up, went to grade school through grade school, various grade schools at Topeka, and then ended up in a Catholic boarding school, military academy actually, in western Kansas, in Hays, Kansas, and got my high school degree at St. Joseph's Military Academy in Hays, Kansas, and also that's where I met my wife at one of the mixer type things.
Just don't make that tattoo.
Right. And so Hays, Kansas became really kind of my home. After high school, I went into the Navy and was in the submarine force for 3 years plus. And when I got out of the Navy, I was married when I was in the Navy. And when we got out of the Navy, I went to work doing kind of minimum wage type jobs. I didn't have anything but a high school education at the time. Also didn't have a GI Bill, which was very necessary for me to go to school.
Right.
And I served in the service during the Korean War, so I was able to participate in the Korean GI Bill. Okay. And when that came on, after I was out of the Navy for a couple of years, I was able to enroll at Fort Hays, Kansas State College, and got my undergraduate degree at Fort Hays. Left Fort Hays and came to Oklahoma State University. It was Oklahoma A&M at the time, and got my master's degree. And by the time I got my master's degree, we were Oklahoma State University, so my diploma says Oklahoma State University. I wrote my master's thesis under Raymond D. Thomas, who was the long-term dean of the College of Business at the time. So my lineage goes back to Raymond D. Thomas, which is quite a stretch of time.
Sort of really the not the father, I guess, but he was one that really brought it.
He really was the I would say he was the father. We had a number of deans and directors before him. I think is what the history points out. Bill Kincaid wrote a great history of our college, but he was the one who really kind of started what was the College of Business. I look at the development of the college, and I see really three people who preceded me, really laying the great groundwork for the college. Raymond Thomas, of course, was one. Raymond Thomas was not only known within the academy, but also was known within the state. He was a tax expert, called upon to help establish the tax commission in the state of Oklahoma. And so he was known not only at Oklahoma A&M, but also in the state of Oklahoma. And then Gene Swearingen came on after him, and Gene was responsible for getting the college accredited by AACSB. And then Dick Poole came in after Gene and really kind of developed the framework for what was the College of Business that I took over. Then we had that 3-year interim with Virgil Miller that before I became dean. So that kind of takes you up to the time that.
So Bob, when you finished your master's degree, did you then immediately start on your doctorate?
Oh no, thanks for asking that. I went back to Fort Hays actually after I got my master's degree and taught for a year as an instructor. And I remember about mid-year, the president of the university called me in, and I said, "God, what have I done wrong? Here I'm an instructor. I'm going over to see the president of the university." And he said, "When are you going to start your doctorate?" and I hadn't even thought of starting a doctorate. I was married. We had 3 children. I was in debt, and people are talking about starting a doctorate. And I said, well, I gave him all the reasons why I shouldn't. He said, well, I don't want you sticking around here for years and years without doing that, because then you'll just hit a dead end. And I received a call from the people at Iowa State University at the time. They had offered me an assistantship before I came to Oklahoma State. And actually, the reason I picked Oklahoma State over Iowa State is because I was an Oklahoma A&M basketball fan growing up in eastern Kansas. And Bob Curlin was my childhood hero.
Right.
Yeah. And later on, I got to meet Bob, and Bob became a member of our associates and a very good friend of mine. So it was a dream come true, actually. But I received a call from the people at Iowa State who had offered me an assistantship for my master's, and they wanted me to come up and teach full time, give a living wage at the time, and be able to work on my doctorate. So I said, well, that sounds like a pretty good idea. And I went home and told my wife, and she didn't think it was a great idea for us to pick our 3 kids up and go to Iowa. But we made the decision to move up there, and I got there and I found out they really didn't have the program I wanted. But OSU didn't have a doctorate program at the time, and so I really couldn't come back here. And then, while the year I was up at Iowa, they brought the PhD program to OSU.
It was in economics.
In economics. And Russ Baugh was, of course, our department head, and he contacted me and said, we have this PhD program. Would you like to come back and enroll in it? And I said, sure, if I can get the assistance that I need. So we worked out a deal, and I came back to OSU. And at the time, Dick Poole was in the program, and Duck Woo Nam was in the program, and they were 1 year ahead of me. So
pretty strong company.
Yeah, I became the 3rd PhD, which was awarded in 1962. I actually left the college and left Stillwater in 1961 and went to Arizona State as my first job.
Okay.
So I was an assistant professor at Arizona State. And then during that first year at Arizona State, I received another call from Russ Baugh. He said, Dick Leftwich is going on leave. He's going to South America, to Chile, with Ford Foundation. We need somebody to teach his courses. Would you be interested in coming back as a visiting professor or assistant professor? And I said, really, things weren't working out well for us at Arizona State. Weren't working out well for me. I didn't care for the situation there. And so I said, well, yeah, we'd love to come back. So I came back as a visiting assistant professor in 1962, and I guess I've been visiting ever since.
62.
That was the beginning of my long-term association with Oklahoma State.
So can you sort of, Bob, trace a little bit, if you come back then as you moved from a visiting professor, you moved into an assistant professor tenure track. Could you kind of share a little bit of your professional development there in the college? Yeah,
I came in, 2 of us came in at the same time. Frank Steinle and I. Frank came in from University of Iowa, and I came in from Oklahoma State University. And Dick was on the faculty at the time. Dick Poole was on the faculty at the time. And of course, Duck Woo Nam had gone back to Korea and started his illustrious career. I just went through the ranks, teaching and doing my research and doing a little bit of publication and getting involved. I think Dick Poole was responsible for this more than anybody, really getting involved in issues that dealt with economic development in the state of Oklahoma. My area of expertise at the time was economics of public finance, and so I was very interested in state and local finance and what was going on in the state. And, got involved with Larkin Warner. Larkin and I, Larkin was actually on the faculty when I was a graduate student, and Larkin and I got because of Dick Poole, got involved in a number of things that dealt with economic
Bob,
development.
If I can interject you to ask earlier, Dick, it seemed like I'm hearing you say, kind of put a little bit different emphasis on the college in reaching out to the public and being engaged.
I think that was, I would say that Dick, well, actually, if you go back and look at the history of our deans, as I mentioned, Raymond Thomas was very much involved in the state of Oklahoma and outreach sort of thing. Gene Swearingen was probably as well known in the state as anybody at the time as a dean. Of course, he went on to become the president of what is now the Bank of Oklahoma, and also the president of Tulsa University. So he was well known in the state. But Dick brought a few of us along in terms of trying to do more in the way of sharing our expertise within the state. I remember a very good example, of course, was his association with Henry Bellman. And when Henry Bellman was elected to the Senate, he called Dick and said, "I need some help in terms of the economics. What's going on? I need some expertise in economics." So Henry Bellman would come back and meet with a group of us that Dick would arrange once or twice a year. And we'd sit down, he'd ask questions, and we would respond the best we could. He was a great listener and asked great questions. But that's the kind of involvement that we sort of trying to share our expertise, what little we had with policymakers in the state. And we got involved with the Kerr Foundation. The Kerr Foundation, of course, was very interested in promoting economic understanding. And also we got involved with economic education, promoting economic education in the grade schools and the high schools. So all of that was because of Dick Poole's leadership as dean. And Lark and I probably were the two greatest disciples of that great man. But I think we've had a history of involvement with the state.
Was this about the time, Bob, when the school formed the office, I guess it was, of research and economic development? Was that during this period?
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to think in terms of exactly when that happened, and I'll look at my notes here just to.
Would that be like 74? I think.
Yeah, I was director of business and economic research, 75. I don't think we had a formal Office of Business and Economic Research during Dick's period of time. I may be wrong on that, but I don't think so. We were doing a number of things. Larkin and I had a grant from the U.S. Department of Labor, and I know Dick had an operation that he was setting up down in the old Morrill Hall. Where he was doing some commuting patterns type of work with Tinker Air Force Base. And Larkin and I were involved with our grant from the Department of Labor. We set up the Manpower and Research and Training Center at Oklahoma State. So Larkin and I were responsible for the first major grants to the state. And then after that, I guess it was, I'm not sure when Dick left the college as dean. I don't remember exactly what year he left.
Well, it's around 68, sound right? Yeah. Somewhere along in there.
Yeah, probably that. Virgil was dean after Dick, but I think there was probably a year again between Dick and Virgil, and so that would be 4 years, and there was a year between, probably around late 60s, early 70s.
Bob Kump came in as president in 66. Seemed like about his second
year.
Yeah,
you just you lose track of time and dates. But there was I would say the formal setup of the Office of Business and Economic Research may have been during Dick's tenure, but I don't believe it was. I think it was later.
Bob, you were the first director.
I was the first
program.
director.
Yeah. Okay, could you kind of share a little bit of sort of some of the, you touched on some of the research projects, sort of the scope of the things you were doing?
Yeah, what we saw here was the University of Oklahoma had something called the Bureau of Economic Research, and they were responsible for publishing data on various economic data for the state. And we didn't want to duplicate what they were doing. It didn't make a lot of sense for us to duplicate what they were doing. So our thrust was more of trying to get faculty involved in various kinds of funded research, because that was the primary interest of the university,
Sure.
was getting more federal funds coming into the university. And business schools typically are not in that particular kind of business. We didn't do a lot of that sort of thing. Consulting with businesses, consulting with the state, that sort of stuff we did quite a bit of, but we were not really into doing a lot of federal funded research. And as I said, Larkin and I were the first to receive a major grant to the College of Business from the federal government. So we were trying to get faculty involved in research as much as we could, facilitating their research. But my major thrust was trying to get an econometric model started for the state. And the reason I wanted this was to work with the tax commission so that we could help the tax commission better understand how to project what they were to expect to receive in the way of funding.
Bob, for sake someone might be listening to this, I mean, could you explain the econometric model a little bit?
Well, what we
not in detail.
No, I'm not capable of explaining it in detail. Actually, an econometric model is essentially a mathematical model of what happens in an economy in a state. And of course, what we needed to know is what was happening at the national level and international level, because that's going to have some impact on what we're doing in the state. So we had to tie in with a national model, which is the model we tied in with was the Wharton model. And we got our national projections from the Wharton people, and then we in turn developed the mathematical model, statistical model for the state of Oklahoma. People who were responsible for that were guys like Ray Grimes, who I hired when I became dean. I hired him in as a director of our business and economic research. Jerry Lage was very much involved in helping us develop the econometric models. And then we worked with the tax commission, and we did a lot of simulation work with them. I had a graduate student, a PhD graduate student, who became very much of an expert in simulating various kinds of scenarios for tax commission.
This is for forecasting model primarily.
Right, to forecast. And he became a consultant with the tax commission. We had a very strong tie-in with the tax commission. They were helping fund us. The Kerr Foundation was helping fund us. We started popularizing this thing first by getting the old Fidelity Bank to underwrite us, to put out our little pamphlet. A guy by the name of Wilf Clark was the CEO of Fidelity before the oil fiasco, the stuff came in Penn Square Bank and that kind of stuff. But we had some real good business and public support of our model.
It brought a lot of attention to the college.
Yeah, we started publishing the thing. We started publishing it once a year, and then we'd have our forecast sessions in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, where we would invite people in to listen to what we forecast for the state. I became I was working with with one of the banks in Oklahoma City, where I was going around the state with them, and I would give little talks about the state of the economy. So it was, yeah, we still do that. I mean, it's part of what we still do, you know.
Bob, could I ask, did most of your projections come out pretty good?
Well, they did until we hit 82, and I was traveling around the state, and as I was going from one speech to another, and I was just seeing the economy going down and down and down.
Did your mark keep changing? Different locations?
I think we just kind of the bank went under, and I quit doing it. Yeah, we had some times where it wasn't too good. Yeah.
Bob, kind of there. Then you became dean of the college in
1977.
77.
Mm-hmm.
And what could we sort of at that watershed moment, or that kind of transition moment, where kind of could we talk maybe twofold? Where was the college in your opinion, kind of looking back now, and where did it need to go?
Yeah, I think you need to understand where business education was, because that impacted where we needed to go. And business education in the United States has had a very interesting history. In the old days, and I say the old days, and that was prior to 1960, business education was very trade school, very descriptive trade school. I remember joining the faculty at Arizona State. Of course, I got my PhD in economics. It's not in business, and economics was in the business school at Arizona State. And I checked into my office, which was on the fourth floor, being the latest hire and the lowest on the totem pole. And I was walking down the hall, and I saw this mock-up of a department store window with mannequins and the whole thing. And I thought, what the devil, are we sharing this building with home economics? And so I went down for coffee with the rest of the faculty, and I asked about the window. It says, "Oh, that's marketing." I said, "What do you mean marketing?" He said, "They teach kids how to trim a window." And so that describes somewhat what business education was prior to 1960. And people were really upset about, what we were turning out. They were not turning out great products for what was happening to modern business. There was a group sponsored, two guys sponsored by the Ford Foundation. And I don't know if Dick went into this or not. It was called the Gordon Howe Report of 19. It was also a Pearson Report in 1959. And essentially, this is what they said. It said business education is terrible and it needs to be changed. And the way we're going to change it is that we're going to select centers of excellence. This is a Ford Foundation. And we're going to put money in these centers of excellence. And at the time they were but they put in around $35 million into these centers of excellence.
Wow.
And the centers of excellence just happened to be Carnegie, Stanford, Chicago, Harvard, and Columbia.
Surprise.
Now where are the top 10 schools today? These 5 schools are going to be in the top 10 every time. And they set the standard for what we were then to do with business education. That was the whole idea. This would spread out among the rest of us. What transpired after that was that American Assembly of Collegiate Schools of Business had to buy into this sort of thing, because this was our accrediting body. And our accrediting body then needed to develop the curriculum for the rest of us to follow, that we're going to be accredited. Well, of course, at the time, Gene Swearingen was dean, and he was going through this period of transition, of trying to move us from what we had before to what was expected of us now. And so that's exactly the time that I came in to be into the business school and started learning something about what business education was all about. I think this is a tremendous this is the background with when we developed our curriculum in the College of Business. Now, in the College of Business, I would say there have been, I guess I'd call them mega trends during that period of time. What happened after that sort of thing that caused us to be what we are today? And I would pick out several. The first thing I would pick out is women. What happened to female enrollment? When I became dean, about 31% of our undergraduate enrollment was female. And almost all of them, or a large number of them, were in the traditional secretarial business education type of programs. When I left the dean's position, over 50% of our undergraduates were female. And none of them were in the traditional business education, secretarial administration, because we no longer had those programs. There are two things that came along that I saw I needed to change. One was women were becoming more dominant in our enrollment, and they were moving into the areas like accounting in particular became a very, very popular enrollment for women, but management, marketing, the whole other area. And another thing that was happening at that time was that we were going through a technological transition. When I became dean, the largest capital outlay that I had was typewriters. Typewriters.
Not keyboard.
No, typewriters. I mean, we had typing labs in the basement of the business school because we had a 2-year secretarial program, we had a 4-year secretarial program, we had an undergraduate degree in business education, we had a master's degree in business education, we had a doctorate degree in business education. We had 5 programs in business education, and we had a very large laboratory of typewriters. Then computer came along, and we had a big discussion with Jay Boggs. The big computer versus distributed computing. Yeah. And of course, Jay was the big computer guy, and we were the distributed. But that was not any different than what was going on in business. Sure. We went down to Halliburton, and they were having the same kind of arguments. Do we want to go those computers out in the offices of everybody? So we were going through that transition as well. So we were bringing in computing. The women were moving out of business education, and I had typewriters.
So that's the wrong side of the trend.
Yeah, and at the same, what was happening at the same time, about the same time, this is early '80s now, is that we were having difficulty with budgets.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We'd gone through the very rapid growth in our budget, and then we had a decrease in budget. By the way, these women coming into the college, not only was an internal shift in the enrollment, but it was also people coming from other parts of the campus, from education, from home economics, from every other area, coming into the business school, women coming into the business school, causing us this tremendous growth. We had a fabulous growth in the late 70s, early 80s, and we were faced with budget cuts. So what I had to do is I had to figure out how are we going to accommodate this tremendous growth in our enrollment, needing more faculty. How am I going to get computing into the college? Because that was absolutely necessary. And the only way I could do that would be to reduce programs. So we took out the 5 programs that I just talked about. And that was kind of traumatic because we had to deal with faculty and primarily faculty. So we were able to do that, and that started to accommodate our need for that. Then what we saw was a a situation that was developing in Tulsa. University Center at Tulsa. Tulsa wanted their own university, of course, and the state regents wanted the University Center at Tulsa. I saw that what the College of Business at OSU was located in Stillwater, not a major business community in the city of Stillwater, and that's no knock on our businesses. It's just not a major center of business, and we really needed a major center of business. We needed a movement into a major center of business. Well, the University Center at Tulsa came along, and I happened to be selected to serve on the committee that would draw up the guidelines for participation in the University Center. And I said, that's an opportunity for us. So Thurman White was the head of this committee, and Thurman was the Mr. Continuing Education person of the state of Oklahoma, out of the University of Oklahoma, that center down there. And Thurman, I started working with Thurman. I thought, well, some way we need to make it possible for us to be there, and what would be the best way to be there. I wanted our master's program there because that's where faculty would be willing to handle. They wouldn't be willing to. We couldn't handle an undergraduate program. We had the major growth on campus, which we couldn't handle, and I wanted to be in Tulsa with our program because it was necessary for us to be there. So I was able to get written into the guidelines that we would select programs based upon geographic location, the closest, and the highest level of accreditation. Well, we just happened to be the closest with our master closer than OU. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And we also had AACSB accreditation for our program, which Northeastern didn't have, and Langston certainly didn't have. So we were able to put our MBA program there. Well, we got our MBA program there, and then I said, now, how do we get some kind of recognition with the business? How do we bring the business community along? So every year, and we went off the college and the executive committee, the department heads and directors, and I went off to a planning session up in Ponca City every spring. We'd have a 2 or 3 day planning session. So we kicked this around, and I threw a challenge out to Jim Romas, who was the director of our executive education center there. And I said, Jim, we need to have an outreach program that helps us bring in the business community because we have an MBA there now and we need some recognition. Tulsa Business Forum, and that was the beginning. We started out very modest, and it became the most popular thing going in Tulsa. And we were then able to really draw some attention to what we were doing in Tulsa in a way of graduate education. So our graduate education and our outreach program kind of meshed there. And then after the Tulsa Business Forum, we kicked off the Executive Management Briefing Series in Oklahoma City, which had been going for over 20 years now and has been very, very popular, and I think has brought a lot of recognition, at least within the state of Oklahoma, to the college. Then what also sort of happening all during the same period of time was globalization issues. We couldn't be sitting here in the state of Oklahoma and not think about global business, because we were sending kids to Halliburton, we were sending them to Exxon, we were sending them to places that were doing business globally. And so we needed to really kind of think in that direction. So I asked Dick Poole, who was, I knew I could get something going if I had Dick Poole directing it, because he was going to make sure it happened. So I asked Dick if Dick was retired at that time, not retired, but he was, had he retired? No, I believe he was still teaching. He taught a honors course in economics. But anyhow, whether he was or wasn't, I asked him to chair a committee to look at how could we bring how could we internationalize our curriculum? And guys like Steve Miller and others served on that particular committee. And Dick, with Steve, primarily with Steve Miller's help, brought together a program for internationalizing our curriculum, which then allowed us to offer an undergraduate degree in international business. But we also tied that in with another major, like marketing or finance or what have you, because we thought our kids would go out with a degree in marketing or finance or accounting and be able to get a job. But if they went out with a degree in international business, they wouldn't be able to get a job. So we wanted to tie the two together. So we had globalization as an issue. Another issue we had is that we had people out around the state who wanted a graduate or MBA degree, but they were in companies and they didn't have time to take full time. So we started doing distance learning, distance education through our distance education center, which was terrific for us.
One of the best.
And that became, we had people enrolled at Halliburton, we had them enrolled at Conoco in Ponca City and Phillips and Bartlesville, and our MBA program then went statewide. So that's kind of those are kind of the issues that we were dealing with during this period of time. During this period of growth, which was very, very, I think we laid a pretty solid foundation for where we are today.
You mentioned some names. Who are some of the people you brought on board in your administration to help drive some of the vision?
Oh yeah, we had some. First of all, we had some terrific department heads and real stability within our department heads. When I first became dean, we had people like Wilton Anderson and Dick Leftwich, people who had been around for a long period of time. And then as they went on, we brought in other folks like, Steve Miller became head of our. Let me back up for a minute. I inherited from Dick a structure that was very good for the college during Dick's regime. In fact, he had to reorganize the college to really get rid of a lot of departments. We had more chiefs than we had other folks running around there. And so he really consolidated departments and pulled together something called administrative services, administrative sciences, accounting, and economics. So he had really pulled it down to, I think, four departments. Administrative services, administrative sciences was marketing, finance, and management. And heading that administrative sciences was Wayne Meinhardt. And Wayne did a terrific job, but Wayne was in management, and he was responsible for the three functional areas of business, in addition to accounting. And of course, we had economics. And then administrative services was essentially business education and business law, is what administrative services was. So I was able to eliminate business education and the secretarial administration, and then I was able then to break up administrative sciences. So I had Wayne Meinhardt stayed on as a department head of management, and then we had didn't have critical mass in finance at one time, but we brought on Steve Miller as head of marketing, and then Lanny Chastain became head of our accounting, School of Accounting, and then we had several in economics. It's a rotating thing in economics. So probably I would say in terms of the academic side, our strength in leadership was in management, marketing, and accounting, and eventually we were able to bring finance along. In outreach, I think was Jim Romas and his staff. They did a terrific job. We just did many things in
Well,
area.
did that, your outreach activities tied, I'm sure, a lot of corporate relationships closer to the college and perhaps some fundraising opportunities. Could you discuss some of those initiatives?
Thank you for reminding me of that. One of the things that I inherited actually from Virgil Miller. Virgil was only in for 3 years, and he was 1 year getting acclimated, 1 year fighting with Anderson and Leftwich, and 1 year looking for a job. So Virgil didn't make a great impact on the college, but he did leave us with one thing that we were able to build on, and that was called the College of Business Administration Associates. And Virgil's idea was to bring in these guys and that they would provide us with advice on how to do things. And he didn't really have a good concept. He brought in people that were not very high in the organization and couldn't do you much good. Other than provide advice that wasn't very good. And I looked at that and I said, gee, I'm not even sure I want to keep that thing around. And so I started talking to a few people and again, calling in guys like Romas. Another guy that really helped me a lot and didn't get a great deal of credit was a fellow by the name of Rudy Greer. And Rudy was a student of mine at the undergraduate and graduate level, and he went to work for Exxon. And when I became director of research, I needed somebody to help me, and I talked Rudy into coming back and working on his doctorate and helping me in the Office of Business and Economic Research. Well, he ended up doing all of his coursework, but he never finished his dissertation. But I brought him, when I moved down to the dean's office, I brought him down to the dean's office. And Rudy was just my alter ego. I mean, he was, and John Bale also. I must mention John Bale, because bless his heart, he was one of the best associate deans around. He was an associate dean under Dick Poole. He served as an interim dean twice. He handled he handled all the undergraduate stuff that I didn't have to mess around with. He was just terrific as an associate dean. We had a very lean administrative structure, but very good. Get back to the associates. Rudy and Jim Romas and I ended up drawing up what do we want to call it, the guidelines for the associates. And one of the things that we put in there is that to become a member of the associates, you have to make a certain amount of financial contribution to the college. And we set it at $1,000 a year, or so much in terms of an endowment. If you endowed a scholarship, such and such. Jerry, when I became dean, our endowment was $85,000.
Endowment?
Our endowment.
I don't even want to ask what you were raising a year in regular.
That was the scholarships. We had nothing in terms of external funding. But you have to remember that we didn't start a foundation until the early '60s.
That's correct. Yeah.
So it was
university was behind the curve totally.
Way behind the curve. We were way behind the curve, and it didn't get into that business until Dick really got that going in the early '60s. And he had some problems early on with that. So we had a problem of getting money, to bringing money into so we could do some of these things that we've talked about. And lo and behold, we were able to kind of develop a very nice group of associates. I don't remember exactly how many we had at the time, but we would have 2 meetings a year. We'd bring them in, and we developed certain kind of committees that they could work on during the year. And we were aiming at people who were at the top of the organization, as opposed to middle management, human resources type people. And we're able to get quite a few of those folks.
Bob, could you name some names? I mean,
yeah, Larry Bump is one. Larry Bump was one of my early ones. Bob Chitwood was one. Ed Keller was one. Bill Elric with Arthur Anderson was another.
Who's your hero with Bob?
Bob Curlin. Bob Curlin. And Bob Curlin was a graduate of the college education, actually. And but he was with Phillips. He was a senior vice president with Phillips Petroleum Company. He was able to get us around Phillips. We had
the banking industry too, as I recall, presidents and.
We had Don Doty from Bartlesville, and Don Doty was a graduate of the College of Arts and Sciences. He became one of our College Business Administration honorees, Hall of Fame people. First non-business school person to become.
Gordon Greer, I think.
Gordon Greer was an early one of our associates. So we had some very good people.
And I'll brag on you a little bit, Bob. I think. As I recall, College of Business Administration was the first college to have associates, and it really became a model program for other colleges that they copied, didn't it?
Right, it did. Actually, the college that the person, the dean who really picked up on this was the dean of the what do we call that? Pat Knab, human. Yeah. Home economics.
Human environmental science.
Human environmental
Don't
science.
let her hear you say home economics. You'll be in trouble.
No, I kid her about that, but she came in and did a terrific job. I mean, she had a job to do, but she did a terrific job with that college, and she took this associates program over to her college. She took a number of things that we did over at her college, but she did a tremendous job over there, and yeah, became a model. I think we College of Education also did. John Linehan's another person who we brought on, and John's still doing a tremendous job for the university.
I think even Bob McCormick, I believe.
Yeah, Bob. Yeah, locally, Bob was very, very instrumental.
Some of the things you had some success with the College of Business Administration, but also I think in corporate giving. Seemed like that really increased significantly.
Well, that was our associates. When, as I said, we had like $85,000 endowment. We made money off of the Tulsa Business Forum, which we were able to put back into other programs, developing other programs. That was the whole concept of that. But we also were able to build on the associates program tied in with the Regents program for endowed chairs. The first endowed professorship we had in the College of Business was the College of Business Administration Associates professorship. And we challenged them. We came in and we said, look, let's try to do this and make it the first one. By the time I left the dean's office, we had 13 endowed positions.
Bob, one part of your strategy, a little bit your model was, it wasn't the money so much you were getting from the associates themselves. Eventually it became what you were able to tap from their companies or corporations, businesses.
Absolutely, yeah. And it all ties. It's all tied together.
Sure.
If a business school is not tied in with the business community, you're not a business school. I mean, that's part of what we do, and I think that through my predecessors who were very active in the state, and I was able to carry some of this stuff on, our business school became a lot better than the one down south.
Sure. And I think your concept of the associates was also in terms of curriculum, looking from the outside, with a jaundiced eye at what we're doing, and it seemed like to me, as I recall, internships, a lot of relationships, placement for students, a lot of things, a lot of synergy.
Yeah, it all goes. Yeah, you're all, you're when it's all said and done, you're going back to what's best for the student.
Sure.
And if you can't place your students,
Exactly.
and we had to have businesses to place our students.
Well, the Spears School of what they call it there. The Conoco Spirit Scholars Program.
Right.
Started from the early days from with Conoco. I mean, with Phillips even before the Conoco Phillips merger. But those things tie on to each other and it builds momentum.
We developed a scholarship program that I'm very proud of, and it came in a conversation that Rudy Greer and I would sit down after 5 o'clock, after everybody had gone home, and that's when we'd have our conversations. And I talked about a scholarship program, and he said, his daughter was going to some school in Arkansas, I forget which school it was. It had something called a scholar leader program. He said it's not a real large endowment. He said it's just to get them involved in leadership. And I said, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't we do something like this here? It's going to call it Scholar Leader. And gosh, we have several $1 million now in our Scholar Leadership program. And it's how it kind of started, where we got a big chunk of money from. A big chunk for us was there was gosh, I wish I could remember his name now. The first thing that goes is where you forget names.
Which company was it?
It was a fellow, it was a man.
Oh.
He wrote us a letter, and it was, you could tell he was quite old.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was in longhand.
Uh-huh.
And he said, I'm a 1920-some graduate of College of Business, and I want to leave some money to the college, and but I want you to take care of my housekeeper. It was we went over the foundation. We said, look, take care of this for us. Obviously, but he ended up giving us $300,000, and that was the beginning, kind of the bigger chunk of getting our Scholar Leader program. Don Doty gave $100,000. Others started coming along after that, and so it's become quite a program. And what we selected, basically, we based it on scholarship at their high school, also leadership type of activities they had in their high school, and that when they came in, we wanted them to do things in addition to being just taking coursework. And then we got them tied into our Summer in London program,
mm-hmm.
or our Summer Abroad program, which has now become Summer in France program, Summer in London program, Summer in other places program.
Part of the international component that you're talking about earlier, wasn't it?
Right. So that, like I say, the scholarships became very important to us. And I noticed that the Spears School just recently had a scholarship banquet. And I was amazed at the number of kids that were there for the scholarships.
Thousands and thousands of dollars in scholarships.
Fabulous program we got going now.
Just want to pause here a minute. I'm going to change the tape. About 55 minutes. It's a 60-minute tape. Make sure I don't accidentally go over.
Well, I don't know. What worked and what didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff didn't work.
Well, Bob, we talked a lot of successes. I mean, that's good, but sort of, looking back and thinking back on your tenure as dean, what were some of your successes, and I won't say failures, what are some things, maybe some of your frustrations, things that didn't work as well for you, some milestones significant accomplishments. Could you share some of that information with us?
Yeah. Trying to think about, I guess I don't think of it in terms of what worked and what didn't work. I think the things that worked the best were the things that we developed. Well, let me say that outside forces caused us to do certain things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that'd be a dummy not to do these things.
Sure, absolutely.
But one of the things that I think that really really helped us along in the sort of the middle period of my being dean was the Centennial Program.
What was that then?
It was an OSU Centennial Program.
Mm-hmm.
And so every year, you remember this, every year we'd go off as a university as a planning group.
I remember some of those.
And every college was challenged to come up with a Centennial project.
Mm-hmm.
You know what ours was?
Yeah.
Tulsa Business Forum.
Tulsa Business Forum. Mm-hmm.
And that was part, again, we went from the university planning thing to a college planning thing. And I said, okay, guys, we're challenged to do this stuff. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so the Tulsa MBA, extension of our MBA program to Tulsa, extension of our MBA program statewide, the Tulsa Business Forum, the connection with their associates, all of that was a part of a challenge that we had to do something greater than we were doing before. So I think a lot of what we achieved came because we have external stimuli, and whether it was within the university, whether it was in the state, whether it was nationally, or was it with our accrediting body? What was it? I found, and I think Dick Poole would say the same thing. Our association, my association with the AACSB, was very helpful because I could see what was going on nationally. I served on the executive committee of AACSB.
You kind of spell that, Bob. That's the
American Association of Collegiate Schools of Business.
Okay.
Business. I think it's called something else now, but it's still the same thing. It's still the same acronym. Right. But I was on the executive committee. I chaired continuing education committee. I chaired the international
We
committee.
were in the accreditation teams.
I chaired, I don't know how many accreditation teams.
You look closely at a lot of schools.
A lot of schools. I probably, in my tenure as dean, I probably chaired accreditation teams, visitation teams to 20, 30 universities around the country. Small, large, some more prestigious than others, some less prestigious than others. But we found that every time I made one of those trips, I learned something. I learned something that we could possibly use within our program. So again, it's external stimuli, finding out what's going on in business education around the country.
Bob, can I just interject? You bring up a good point. Maybe a question to follow with. How did you, from your perspective of the other schools that you're visiting on visitation teams and looking at, how did you at the time, and perhaps today as well, but certainly your tenure, how did you view Oklahoma State? How did it fit in general college?
Yeah.
Honest evaluation.
Yeah, honest evaluation. I think we're very good. We're very good at how do I want to say this? As a state land grant university, I think we do very well. The universities that the worst thing that happened in my opinion, to higher education generally, but business education in particular, were these damn ratings by U.S. News and World Report and all that sort of stuff. I think it does absolutely no good. If you take the top 10 universities that are rated every year by ACSB, everybody knows who those are. I mean, you don't need a rating service to know who those are. And you know what? They're all graduate programs. They're not undergraduate programs. Now we have at Oklahoma State University, we have a major undergraduate commitment. I mean, that's our bread and butter.
State mission
mandate. Right. Now, if I had to do anything, if I could wave a magic wand and say, let's do something much better, I'd say let's do something much better at the undergraduate level.
Undergraduate level.
Absolutely. Because we have built our graduate programs on the back of undergraduate education. What we've done is we've taken our graduate, our faculty, some of our best faculty, and put it in graduate education, and put some of the least experienced faculty into undergraduate education. And that's not where we are. We're not the most prestigious PhD granting institution in the country. That's not us. It just isn't. I mean, I don't care what they say, and it never will be, in my opinion. Do we do a decent job at graduate education? Yes. You know, do we send our PhDs out to the most prestigious universities? Absolutely not. Will we ever? No. Because the most prestigious universities exchange their faculty with one another. We don't play in that ballpark. And so I would say, if I had anything to do with it again, I'd say, let's really put our best faculty doing the undergraduate work and the master's work.
Did Wilton Anderson have that right? You know, Wilton's the one in the county. He taught those introductory classes, and he had his system where he'd pick kind of his superstars, and his undergraduate, maybe even at the master's level, would send them off to get your PhD and then bring them back to Oklahoma State.
Right. And I tell you what, if there's one department within the college that had it right in terms of undergraduate education, was accounting.
Yeah.
And the reason, it was very, very practical though, because you get your undergraduate degree in accounting, you go ahead for an accounting firm, and you get your CPA. When Wilton was hiring faculty, he required that they all get their CPA, and that would be unheard of now. I mean, you couldn't do that to a faculty person. And it's part of this is all this stuff has been put on us by accreditation, by we had a dean of the business school at VPI. This guy was named Billy Mitchell. Billy Mitchell came from Alabama. And Billy said one time, he was a very humorous guy, and he built the program at VPI. He went into VPI and it was very much like what you had a Department of Business, and he really built a decent college of business out there. He retired from VPI and he went back to Alabama and became dean at Alabama for 4 or 5 years. And we're sitting around one time and said, Billy, when are you going to give up being dean? He said, when I find a faculty that reads as much as it writes.
Maybe never.
But we went through this going back in time again. If we go back to the Gordon Howe report, we were too trade school, and then we became maybe too much research oriented and not enough practice oriented, and that's kind of where accounting had a one up on us, because they had that real tie to the profession through their CPA and their undergraduate education. So it's always been kind of a stream with accounting, but it hasn't been a stream with the other departments as much as it has with accounting. Not as the career path was very well defined.
Right, sure.
You either went into public accounting or you went into corporate accounting.
As you look back on your tenure, some major milestones, and some you touched on in our conversation, obviously, but maybe repeating, but kind of moments you remember where you kind of arrived different key events in the college.
Well, I think our in terms of our outreach, certainly our econometric model, our Tulsa Business Forum, our executive management briefings,
Distance learning programs.
Another program that we did in our outreach that I'm quite proud of is every year the dean of the business school at OU and I got together and played golf, and we talked about what we could do together, which was very difficult because faculty frequently don't want to do things like that together. But one thing we said we might be able to do is to do a corporate program, a corporate continuing education program, management development program. And so he and I went around to various companies and said, would you sponsor this? Well, if you go in there by yourself, they say, we can't do this for you if we don't do it for OU. So we went in together, and they couldn't say that to us.
Great strategy.
Yeah, so we went to the firms around the state, and lo and behold, we got support for this program, and I thought it was quite an innovative thing to do. Still going today. So we have that executive development program going. I think our Scholar Leader program, our Summer in London program really took off. And the person who drove that, there was always a person, somebody who comes in and has an idea. And Jim Jackman came into my office and he said, I'd like to. We ought really do a Summer in London program. He'd been to London on a sabbatical and did some postgraduate work over there as a lawyer in international law. And he said, why don't we try this Summer in London program? I said, geez, Jim, how are we going to do that? He said, well, I said, I'll try to get enrollment. We charge so much, charge the students so much, and we'll get a contact with a university over there, and we'll start working on it. And I said, well, let's do it if you can do it. And Jim went around and posted things on the bulletin board around the university, or went to various colleges around the state, posted stuff on the bulletin board, and Extension pulled in Extension. Of course, they helped underwrite the thing to start out with. Again, because we were able to get some money from our Tulsa Business Forum, we were able to underwrite a program in Summer in London. And Jim was a real pain in the rear on this. I mean, he was just a driving force in this thing. And he ran that program for several years, working through Extension. And Jim then became my assistant dean at Zayed University when I was at United Arab Emirates. And of course, that's where his wife murdered him. So we had that tragic ending to that story. But Jim was a driving force in that Summer in London program, which now is probably the most popular student program that we have going. And they, like I said, Extension now has moved it on into Paris and other places around Europe, and looking at, I'm sure that the dean will be able to tell you what programs they're looking at now, but they're looking to extend it beyond where they are. Scholar Leader, that all tied together. I think some of the real accomplishments we made were things, again, that were forced on us because of budget constraints. I mean, we had to do
departments.
we had to consolidate certain programs, and we had to say we can't do these things anymore. We had to do because we had to do other things. But I'm extremely proud of the leadership that we had within the college.
Speaking of pride, Bob, what looking back, what gives you the most sense of pride in your tenures there?
One thing?
Mm-hmm. Just anything, but there's some things that you look back with special pride for you.
Yeah, I think our associates program. Mm-hmm. I think that's that really. That was a program I'm most proud of.
It enabled a lot of things, didn't it?
Yeah. It enabled a lot of things. It enabled me to become acquainted with the business community of the state of Oklahoma. I was an economist, for crying out loud. I was not in the business community. I really didn't know these folks, and I really needed some contacts myself. So that was very helpful.
Bob, what do you spent how many years at Oklahoma State University from 60 whatever to?
Oh, I first enrolled in my master's program in 1956. Mm-hmm. So 56 and 56.
Wow. All your years as a professor, head of the office of that you created, deanship. How do you hope people remember you, Bob? What do you think?
I don't know. How would they remember me? Well, it's. I hope they put me into the categories of the in the group with Raymond Thomas and Gene Swearingen and Dick Poole, and not Virgil Miller. I hope I fit into that group. I'm the second longest tenure dean in the college. I come only after Raymond Thomas.
My gosh.
So, I lasted long. Somebody asked me one time and said, what do you owe your longevity to? And I said, rapid faculty turnover.
Not true. Well, what, kind of finishing on that note a little bit, and I could add a few myself here, but I'm not. What adjectives, Bob, would you think some of your colleagues, people knew you, alumni of the college, what adjectives would they use to describe you?
Golly. I don't know.
Tough, focused, caring.
I think aggressive may be
one.
Mm-hmm.
Risk taker, aggressive.
I think they would say risk taker. Mm-hmm. Some would say that. I threw a lot of things I threw a lot of things up against the wall. Now, a lot of them didn't stick.
Some of them don't.
Yeah. But I came in with an idea. I really am a kind of an idea person. Mm-hmm. I generate thought. I think is probably.
I always thought of focused and tough.
I don't know what it is. Tough, I guess. I had to be tough. So you had to be tough to survive certain things. Focused, I don't know whether I could say I was focused. Mm-hmm. I kind of shot, kind of a shotgun type of person. I'm not that focused.
Well, Bob, kind of concluding, what do you, and I'm not asking about the current leadership, just thinking about the college, where do you see the college or now the Spirit School of Business going? Where do the role, you talked about undergraduate education, which was very insightful.
Well, I think what they're doing is, as I look at it from the outside, I think their emphasis on international has gone down the tubes, which disappoints me. They closed the office of international business there when Steve Miller was running. So I don't see that they have that great focus anymore. They've moved over into this entrepreneurship area, which was an area that a number of people tried to push me, and I just couldn't generate interest. This dean has been able to generate more interest in this area than I was able to.
Some good gifts too.
Yeah. Well, and even before that, she was able to generate interest that I was not able to generate. maybe it came from because I wasn't interested in it. But I just didn't see a lot of expertise out there that impressed me, and maybe that was the reason I didn't. Well, there's a fellow one time, another dean, a wise dean one time. That this guy was at Southern Miss. These guys come from the South and have all these wise sayings. But we were talking about entrepreneurship has been a discussion within business education for a long time. Can you teach entrepreneurship? That's the question, and I still think it's a question. And this dean from Southern Mississippi said, Bobby said, I kind of likened it to you take a Stradivarius violin and you give it to a person with talent, a gift, and that person plays that violin in such a way that it's beautiful. And you give it to another person who doesn't have the gift, but you give him a lot of lessons, and he plays it like a fiddle. I think you have to have a gift to be an entrepreneur. I still believe it, and I would always believe it. There's certain things you can teach that person with a gift that he will be able to use, or she will be able to use. You'd be able to accounting, marketing, finance, how to do a business plan. These are things that you can teach them. But an entrepreneur is different than me. They have a certain drive, have a certain focus that I never had or never will have. And I think that's true. I mean, it's different. I mean, they will not be a good dean either, or they will not be a good faculty member. So we all have that kind of gift that we have to play on. And the question comes back, can you teach entrepreneurship? And I don't know. I don't know that you
create an environment in which they can thrive, perhaps.
That's right. And so I think that's the thrust that the college is going now, which is something that I didn't do, and probably if I were still dean, I still wouldn't do it. There's a lot of people, a lot of colleges are doing it, and some are more successful than others. But I see the college. They've been able to build on the endowed professorship program. I'm very pleased to see that. Of course, the gift that came in, the gifts are coming in now are much larger than the gifts that we were able to generate. But this is a process that we started early on, and it was a process that started back when we started the foundation, and we had to have a foundation. We had to have the university support. And we had to have all the things right for us to get these things done. We couldn't have had the endowed positions if it had not been for the state support. That was very necessary. But I think they're building on that, and I'm pleased to see that happening. Our faculty are getting better. Absolutely, they're getting better. And they're better than what faculty that we started with. And they'll get better as time goes on. And we have some darn good faculty doing some darn good things. Yeah.
Outstanding students too.
Yeah.
Of course, again, there's that synergy of scholarships and the internships and the opportunities, leadership opportunities you create for them.
Yeah, I think our student body is just much better than the student. One thing that I probably I overlooked, I didn't emphasize during this time is the one thing that I missed when I moved out of being a faculty member to administrator is I quit teaching. And that's probably a mistake. Not probably, it was a mistake. But I saw Gene Swearingen. Gene Swearingen always taught a course. He taught us a basic course in statistics. And it was 100 people in that course. And I took that course. But I found that as time went on, Gene Swearingen assistant taught the course more than he taught the course. And so I said, well, that's not going to happen to me. But I probably should have stayed more in contact with students. The way I tried to stay in contact contact with students is I had a monthly breakfast meeting with kids from the Business Student Council. And we'd sit around at 7:30 in the morning and we'd talk about things that went on in college. And I found out some things that were concerning that I was able to take back to the department heads and faculty. But contact with the students, you lose that contact. And I see that the faculty who are honored, the people who are remembered, are faculty. When you go out and talk to alumni, they don't talk about the dean. They talk about Professor X. And that's who they should be talking about. Those are people who really impacted their life. And, that's kind of the overall good thing about what the profession we're in.
Bob, anything we left out? Anything else you think of?
No, I can't think of anything. I'd probably go on for 2 or 3 more hours pontificating, but no, this has been fun. I've enjoyed this.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Bob.